point of order, Mr. Bernard Jenkin. Sir Bernard Jenkin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rather imagine that if you didn't enjoy being bombarded, you wouldn't enjoy so much sitting in that chair. And I note the dilemmas you face mean that on occasion you will sometimes have to please some and not others, but it is becoming remarkable how often you please one lot and not the other lot. I would also remark, Mr. Speaker, that you have inveighed against most unusual things happening in this House which you did not like. And I would say it is most unusual for a Speaker so often to prevent the government having debated the matters which the government wished to put before the House. And it has also been one of your mantras, Mr. Speaker, that the House should be permitted to express its view, even when it comes to changing the meaning of standing orders. And yet you have denied the opportunity of the House to express its view on this matter, because this motion was never voted on Saturday. No.
Want the honourable gentleman to be heard, as he must be, fully and without fear or favour, and then I know he will allow me the courtesy of an uninterrupted response. Sir Bernard Jenkin.
Well, because this motion was never voted upon, it ceased to exist. It ceased to exist as soon as it was amended, and I confess, Mr. Speaker, surprised that the reason for my right honourable friend's amendment, my right honourable friend for South Dorset's amendment, being tabled, failed to enter your head, because the reason was there was an anxiety that the law was not going to be complied with and the letter would not be sent. So the circumstances have changed in that respect. And can I just alert you and the House, Mr. Speaker, to the fact that my committee will be holding a hearing on the role of the Speaker. It has to be said, somewhat in the light of the experience of recent months.
First of all, let me say I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman for his multifaceted point of order, and it was multifaceted. There were several features to it, and that's important. Secondly, I say to the honourable gentleman that I hear what he says about his committee conducting an inquiry into the role of the Speaker, and that's absolutely proper, and I think he said something from a sedentary position about tomorrow and evidence being taken and witnesses being heard, and that's absolutely right. I don't know what he expects me to deduce from that. I wouldn't dream of seeking to comment adversely, still less to trespass, which it would be quite improper to seek to do, upon the legitimate autonomy of any select committee of this House. And it's perfectly proper for his committee to do that. I'm entirely untroubled by it, and it's a reflection of his conscientiousness that he should undertake such an inquiry. Thirdly, what I say to the honourable gentleman, and there are people in this chamber who know very well the truth of what I say to the honourable gentleman, with respect to how unfortunate that one side seems to be disadvantaged by judgments from the chair. Let me say to the honourable gentleman, I haven't got off the top of my head a count of the number of times that I have granted in the past urgent questions and, in some cases, though they were less fashionable at the time, emergency debates to people of what was then called a Eurosceptic disposition and would now be called a Brexiteer disposition. And the honourable gentleman was one of them. And when I was granting the honourable gentleman and some of his honourable and right honourable friends the opportunity to challenge, to question, to probe, to scrutinise, in some cases to expose what they thought were the errors of omission or commission of the government of the day, I don't recall the honourable gentleman complaining that I was giving him too many opportunities to make his point, and it wasn't a fair use of the House's time, and it was very unfair on his party, and it was a violation of the rights of his government. Now, it may be that sotto voce he was somehow making this point, but if so, I didn't hear it. And I remind the honourable gentleman additionally, and I think fourthly, that yes, and I will make the point because it's an important point to make, that his honourable friend, the member for Basildon and Billericay, tabled an amendment to the Queen's speech in 2013 on the case for a referendum on UK membership of the European Union, a most unusual, though perfectly proper thing for a government backbencher to do. And I selected that amendment, and I did so because I thought that it was well supported and there was a compelling case for it to be considered. So what I'm saying to the honourable gentleman is that when he was getting the decisions in his favour, he wasn't grumbling. He's grumbling now because he doesn't like the judgment. But the judgment I've made is an honourable and fair one, and I'm afraid if the honourable gentleman doesn't like it, there's not much I can do about that. I'm trying to do the right thing for the House as a whole. And my last point, yes, my last point to the honourable gentleman is this, and it's very important not just for members or even particularly for members in the House, but for those observing our proceedings. Nothing in what I have said in any way impinges upon the opportunity for the government to secure approval of its deal and the passage of the appropriate legislation by the end of the month. If the government have got the numbers, the government can have their way, and it's not for the Speaker to interfere. The judgment I've made is about the importance of upholding a very long-standing and overwhelmingly observed convention of this House. That is what I've done, and I make absolutely no apology for it whatsoever.